This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast, Chris Graham, and we're going to talk some wrestling here on this podcast. And I'm still in need of a co-host for our wrestling podcast. I got to figure out some solution to this issue. I've got, Scott German joins me on a regular basis. We talk NBA sports and Baltimore Orioles, Washington Nationals baseball. Ron Mullins, we talk NASCAR. Seth Meganson and I, we get together and talk a lot of things, including World Cup soccer this time. Wrestling, still looking for somebody. So, you know what? If you're interested, send me an email at AugustaFreePress2@gmail.com, and let's see if we can get something going here. We need a wrestling co-host to help these podcasts get even better. But let's go through the news of the wrestling world. A lot of stuff to go through here on this show. Let's start with, as we're recording this podcast on Wednesday, the sad news of the day in pro wrestling. Leon White, Vader, Big Van Vader, passing away at the age of 63. Vader, of course, a champion boy from IWGP in Japan, AWA, when he was, before he was Vader, he was just Leon White. Started out as Baby Bull White, then Bull Power White back then on those days, if you watched those ESPN AWA shows back in the late 80s. Then, of course, in WCW, he was the world champion there. He was in WWE for a long, long time at the top of the game. And, he played in the NFL. He played for the Los Angeles Rams. He was on their Super Bowl 14 team. Two-time All-American at the University of Colorado as an offensive tackle. So, a guy that had an NFL career, then a great long wrestling career. Had been in bad health the last couple of years. Big man. He even in his heyday, in his prime athletically, he was 375 pounds plus. And so no surprise, I guess, unfortunately, that, heart issues would become a problem for him later in life. And apparently a month ago or so had been diagnosed with a severe case of pneumonia and just was not able to recover. And so at the age of 63, Big Van Vader has passed away. And, I reminisce a bit on Vader from, again, those early days in AWA, when he was first out of pro football and joining that AWA cast of characters. Vern Gagne's group there, the Minnesota-based promotion that recorded its TV shows in Vegas, that showed up on ESPN for all those years. They found some talent. They had a lot of talent. Hulk Hogan really cut his teeth there after starting his career on some indies. Really became a known entity through his AWA time. Jesse the Body Ventura, Adrian Adonis, thinking through. There were, a lot of folks. Shawn Michaels, a very chubby Shawn Michaels. If you ever get a chance to look at some of those clips of Shawn Michaels early in his career, he was a 245 pound, just, kind of doughy-faced kid that became the Heartbreak Kid later on in WWE. But Leon White, Big Van Vader, he showed off that athleticism that was so key to his, there are so many big wrestlers, so many 300-pound plus, close to 400-pound wrestlers in the business, but very few of them have anything marketable in terms of mobility or anything else. But Vader, because of his pro football background, and he was a two-time All-American college football player, played in the NFL, played on the Super Bowl team. He was a guy who could move. His 375 pounds, he carried very, very well in the ring, and that's what really stood out about White. And he was good on the mic as well. That's and it's key to the business. It doesn't matter how good you are as a worker, how good you look athletically, but if you can't carry it, with your mic skills, you're not going to make it very far. And when he left AWA to go to Japan. And conveniently left out of a lot of the bios, those AWA days. The bios that I've read today of White, I say bios, the obits, I guess you want to call them now, since he has passed away. They start with the IWGP Championship as if that's where he started in the game, but that's where he became Vader, and he developed that persona that would carry him to those world title reigns, etc. But he did great for his career, and it's sad to see a guy at 63 years old passing away. That's too young. I'm 46 this week, so that's not far down the future. And White Vader passing away, so that's sad news. Different level of sad news, if you want to say, I guess. The news that Big Cass, real life name William Morrissey, has been released by WWE. Big Cass, who, the shocking part of this, if you want to say, shocking, it was shocking. He was on the Money in the Bank pay-per-view wrestling the opening match on the main card Sunday night. On Tuesday, then 2 days later, he's fired. Basically, calling release, he's fired. Didn't even get future endeavors in the press statement from WWE. Just basically said he's been released. We don't wish you any. They didn't say they didn't wish you. They, basically when you don't offer the we wish him all the best on his future endeavors, that's a sign that something acrimonious happened behind the scenes. Now, there had been some talk that in the walk-up to Big Cass's match with Daniel Bryan, not at Money in the Bank, but that Backlash show from back, I guess it was May, mid-May, early May, something like that, that he had run afoul of Vince McMahon personally by ad-libbing a segment. They brought out a little wrestler to stand in for Daniel Bryan in a segment, and Cass was supposed to confront the little guy and then, push him or something like that. But apparently, Cass suggested that he should do more. He was told, no, don't do more. He did more on the live show and got verbally castigated for doing so not long afterwards. And that's what the speculation was. That was what led to that early tap-out defeat at Backlash to Daniel Bryan. I mean, I say early, it felt like 5 or 6 minutes into the match, he had the 7-footer tapping out to the 5'8" guy. And but then what's odd to me then, so that's fine. If those are the issues, and then you're reading more scuttlebutt now, seeing some reports that Cass has sort of developed a big head syndrome, in terms of his interactions with fellow wrestlers, and there were concerns there. Also some concerns. I mean, again, this is the rumor mill kind of stuff, so take it for what it's worth. But apparently on the recent European tour, Morrissey, I guess we can start calling him now because William Morrissey is no longer Big Cass, that apparently he engaged in some hijinks after consuming lots and lots of alcohol, and WWE doesn't like its guys out there publicly shenaniganing themselves through those kind of situations. So, all these red flags pop up. So to fire a guy with that kind of a recent track record, that's not a surprise. What surprises me is that you still invested 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks into a second match with Daniel Bryan, which again he lost by tap out this past Sunday, and it was a better match. The first match was sort of almost a squash match for Daniel Bryan against a 7-footer. The match on Sunday was actually he was given offense. Cass was given offense. He was given the opportunity to sell a little bit that maybe there'd be an upset win on his part in Daniel Bryan. And so the odd part to me is one that you invest that time in Cass if the thinking was you're going to fire him anyway. I mean, unless this was a very rash decision, we're not seeing anything about anything that could have happened between Sunday and Tuesday that would have less necessarily added to the thinking or changed the thinking of WWE brass towards Cass. Like, that Sunday, hey, you're a guy that we want to have on the main card, and Tuesday we want to fire you. You would think that something would have had to have happened in that interim time that was very egregious. There's no indication that's the case. The indication is it was sort of just a accumulation of discredits that added up. And so it's not so much, I guess there is a bit of the investing in Cass that is questionable to me, but also, there is talk about Daniel Bryan that his contract, now that he's finally back in the ring, persuaded WWE to let him back in the ring in the walk-up to WrestleMania, that his contract now, which had been frozen in time, the performance contract, is now, it's back on the clock, and it comes up apparently September 1st, and we only know that because he talked about that on a recent podcast, that September 1st, his contract comes up, and it came up in the context of how the All-In pay-per-view that Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks are putting on in Chicago is September 1st. And the question was actually put directly to Bryan, okay, so are you talking midnight August 31st? Or are you talking midnight September 1st? Because the idea being, hey, if your contract comes up and WWE doesn't re-sign you long-term, could you appear on All-In? And so the fact that Daniel Bryan actually entertained the notion of, well, I don't know. I have to think about it. I don't know what the situation is, at which day it is, and can I appear on All In, tells you that his head is not in a WWE long-term future kind of thing. So if you're WWE, you don't have a lot of time left with Daniel Bryan, and you wasted a month, maybe 5-6 weeks of Daniel Bryan's remaining time on Big Cass. And so here's what I'm thinking: if WWE does not intend to re-sign Daniel Bryan long term after his contract comes up September 1st, then why not use Daniel Bryan's departure to elevate somebody? If Cass would have, he lost the match at Backlash, if he comes back and wins it at Money in the Bank against Daniel Bryan, that's a huge win for him against a former WWE, couple-time former WWE World Champion. That would be a huge push for Cass, and a good way to use Daniel Bryan's last few months. At this stage, though, Bryan gets 2 tap-out wins against a guy that's no longer in the company. Again, maybe WWE's thinking about re-signing Daniel Bryan long-term. Maybe they don't look at this. Maybe they look at it as he got rid of a big guy, and that's going to elevate him. Maybe they need to tell Daniel Bryan that, so that when he goes out for his next set of podcast interviews with his buddies in the business, that he's not out there selling that he's going to be part of All In, because that's getting us to think different thoughts there as far as that goes. Speaking of Money in the Bank, I thought we would recap some of at least what I saw from Money in the Bank and some of my thoughts post pay-per-view. One, the pay-per-view at least got me interested in the product again. After the Backlash pay-per-view, I will admit to you that there were a few weeks where I didn't turn on WWE programming in any way, shape, or form. Even NXT, the Backlash pay-per-view was that bad that it turned me off the whole product. This one was a good show, but I got to nitpick, right? What's the point of doing a podcast if you're just going to talk about how much of a fanboy you are? So the nitpicking I'll do here: Nakamura loses again. Shinsuke Nakamura once again in a main event type match with AJ Styles. I say main event type because they don't get to end the show for some reason, even though they're the 2 best wrestlers in the company right now. They and Seth Rollins, anyway. So Nakamura again challenges Styles for the championship, and he loses again. This time, a clean loss. I guess you can call it that. It was a last man standing match, and after lots and lots of good back and forth between the two, AJ Styles hit the big forearm, the phenomenal forearm from the top rope onto the floor, knocking Nakamura through a table, and then Nakamura not able to answer the 10 count and loses the match. So clean loss, no interference, no low blows or anything like that, at least on Styles' part. And so Nakamura once again loses in his championship challenge. And what this does for me, and I didn't even write this in the column I wrote about this week, but I was definitely thinking it as I wrote it. Right now, your 2 top title situations on SmackDown and on Raw. Nakamura Styles has been the feud at the top of that card since Royal Rumble. Since Nakamura won the Royal Rumble, got that elevation, right, to be to challenge in the main event supposedly of WrestleMania against AJ Styles, and then your other situation, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, which has been lingering on for years now. Both those guys, both the challengers in this case, one a face, Roman Reigns, challenging a heel, Brock Lesnar, the other a heel, Nakamura now a heel, challenging Styles as the face champion. But both of the challengers have long losing streaks against the champs. And so, at this stage for Roman Reigns, what we're hearing is that Roman Reigns is yet again being groomed to elevate himself to a match at SummerSlam, apparently, against Brock Lesnar once again to challenge for the title for the umpteenth time. I'll talk more about a scenario possibly for that later. But and then Nakamura and Styles, I mean, at some point when you have a guy who's your top contender challenging and repeatedly losing, and then you throw him back out there again, the fans aren't going to believe that there's a need to watch this match, and that's sort of the problem right now with on the Raw side of things with Reigns and Lesnar. Why do we care? What do we care about anymore? Lesnar has beaten Reigns 100 times, it feels like. Same thing is becoming the case with Nakamura and Styles, and as entertaining as those matches have been to watch, if there's not going to be any kind of a split, it's starting to feel like Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair from back in the 80s in the old NWA, the Mid-Atlantic territory of NWA. When, how many times can you watch Dusty lose to Ric Flair or beat him by disqualification and not win the belt? at some point you've got to put the belt on the challenger, or you've got to find a new challenger. And we're probably to that stage now with Styles and Nakamura. Not sure where things are going to head from here, but Styles needs a new dance partner, which means Nakamura gets a new dance partner. And the question then is, what does Nakamura do now? I mean, he's been challenging for the belt since Royal Rumble. We're now midway through the year. Where does this take Nakamura now? And I'm sure it takes him down a peg. Obviously, it's got to. He can't be at that main event status anymore. He's going to go back to the mid card. So that's interesting. I mean, it would have made sense to me if you could have elevated both guys by having Nakamura win one of these matches recently, and have those guys feud for a while and kind of go back and forth for a bit. But that decision not made. So we'll have to see the fallout from there. Another noteworthy finish. Ronda Rousey challenges Nia Jax for the Raw Women's Championship, and I've got no quibble at all with Ronda Rousey not winning the Women's Championship and effectively her first singles match in WWE. She wrestled a tag match famously at WrestleMania this year. She's been working a lot on house show cards as a tag wrestler. Certainly her debut as a singles wrestler on TV against Nia Jax, and put on a good show. But if she wins the belt her first time out, that puts everybody else in the division so far behind that it's actually it's good booking to have Rousey there, but then not have her win. I'm not sure how I feel. In fact, I'm sure how I feel about Alexa Bliss cashing in the Money in the Bank briefcase that night, to then to beat Nia Jax. They've been feuding for a while. After they were partners. That's the great way to end up with people feuding. You have them partner for a while, and then Bliss turned, and we've seen those two back and forth for a few months now. Now I know that this cash in then has impact on Rousey. We saw that Monday night on Raw, where Rousey gets involved. Now she's quote unquote suspended for 30 days, even though she's advertised on lots of house shows between now and the end of that supposed 30-day suspension, the TV suspension. So yeah, okay, now we've got a three-way feud between Bliss and Ronda Rousey and Nia Jax. But I am one, and you've heard me say this before. You've seen me write it before, and you'll hear me say it umpteenth time. The best prop in all of pro wrestling is that Money in the Bank briefcase. WWE ruined it last year on the men's side, at least, with the move to have Baron Corbin win it, and then whatever, he fell out of favor for some time with the Office, as they say, and he challenged and lost. And pretty early in the process too. I want to say it was mid to late summer of last year. So, and then Carmella famously, I mean, she won it controversially, but then she used it well. I mean, challenged and snuck one from Charlotte Flair. So that's the way that's supposed to work. That briefcase is it lingers out there. It's best when it lingers out there, like Carmella used it. There's always that prospect of that person with the briefcase. Whenever you hear their music hit at the end of a championship match and they run down from the ramp to ringside to get in the ring, whether or not they ask the ref to ring the bell is always a big controversy. It's always an exciting thing for fans, and that moment is just so thrilling, so scintillating for fans, that to have that briefcase last literally maybe 60, 65 minutes that night just takes away the mystique from it. I mean, there are other ways you could have done something to get Bliss, in heat with both Jax and with Rousey. You could have had someone else win the belt and then have Bliss interfere, and she would have had legitimacy to interfere in the Rousey Nia Jax match without the Money in the Bank briefcase. She still doesn't like Nia Jax. Maybe she attacks Nia Jax, and that causes Ronda Rousey to lose by disqualification. She gets upset, or maybe she attacks Ronda Rousey out of jealousy because she wants to be the one to win the belt back off of Nia Jax. Again, you interject there. Those are two easy scenarios without having to cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase and waste that opportunity on one night. Now, the other Money in the Bank briefcase went to Braun Strowman. Now, my first impression of this was I'm not happy that Braun Strowman is the Money in the Bank guy, the briefcase holder, because he doesn't need it. Braun Strowman's going to be a champion pretty soon. He should already have had that opportunity, and he's had title matches, but with Vince McMahon's obsession with making Roman Reigns the star, he's missed the fact that Braun Strowman is the star that he wants Roman Reigns to be. And so, you put this briefcase on this guy, I guess I'll take the positive out of that, and this is what I took at first as the positive out of that. Hey, that means that Braun Strowman is considered a future champion, because except for Baron Corbin's horrible cash-in when he lost Vader last summer, that guy ends up being a champion. We've seen some people really elevated to the superstar level with that. I think Strowman's already there. He just needs the belt to sort of validate what the fans have been saying for at least the past year, maybe year and a half, that Braun Strowman is the top big guy face of the company, and they want him to be that. So now here's what I'm taking. So again, my first impression was don't like Braun Strowman getting that. I want to see anybody else get that, because Strowman's going to be a champion eventually anyway. But here's what I'm seeing now. If those horrible rumors we're hearing that Roman Reigns is going to challenge yet again Brock Lesnar for that Universal title at SummerSlam, the only thing that makes any sense for that to be the case, and of course it makes so much sense what I'm about to say that it probably won't happen because it's just too obvious what you should do with this. Roman Reigns finally, Daniel Bryan-like, right? He finally beats Brock Lesnar after all these times, just like it happened actually. The best Money in the Bank briefcase cash-in of all time, at least until this maybe happens at SummerSlam, was Seth Rollins cashing in not even after a match was over, but actually in the middle of a match, making that Brock Lesnar-Roman Reigns match from, what was it, 31, 32? He made that match a triple threat match, and then beat Reigns. Lesnar didn't have to have his shoulders pinned to the mat. Rollins beats Reigns and starts a nice title reign for himself. That's the best cash in at WrestleMania a couple years ago. So if there's a similar situation, and Roman Reigns finally, after taking 20 German suplexes, a couple of F5s, he finally crawls on top of Brock Lesnar and gets the 1, 2, 3, and then you hear Braun Strowman's music hit. I tell you what, the arena's roof will fly off if that's the case. And Strowman getting the championship that way, then you've screwed Roman Reigns, and so again you got the Daniel Bryan scenario from a few years ago playing out. At least in Vince McMahon's mind, it plays out. Actually, what would end up happening with the fans is there'd be so many thank you Brauns that night that maybe Vince would finally realize Roman Reigns isn't the future of this company. It's actually Braun Strowman. And perhaps, who knows, maybe that's in the cards too, and what you'll see is there's already a recognition of this being the case, and when Strowman comes out to the huge pop that he would get with that briefcase, if that played out that way, and Roman Reigns could then, it would be a legitimacy for him to turn heel, like lots of fans have wanted him to do for a long time, which could actually, down the line, make him a more effective face, but he could turn heel after losing and, basically just go ballistic. Almost Bret Hart Montreal Screwjob like ballistic. And that could really set up an interesting, long story arc for those two guys leading into next year's WrestleMania. And if you play it the right way, Braun Strowman, Roman Reigns main eventing WrestleMania next year, that ain't a bad show. It ain't a bad show if you ask me about that. So yeah, this is why I've got some positive thoughts coming out of this Money in the Bank pay-per-view that I didn't expect to have. I honestly, I was so down after Backlash that, again, I stopped watching the product. And I'm not the only one. The ratings went in the tank. Raw's numbers are in my head right now, so this is, SmackDowns are very similar. But the post-WrestleMania Raw had an average 3.9 million viewers for the 3 hours. We're, down in the 2.4, 2.5 million range now. That's 40% of your audience leaving you because of bad booking. You're not giving us any reason to watch. So, I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon. My habits have sort of hardened now at this stage. Even though I cover wrestling, I write about wrestling, I've written wrestling books. Yeah, you've lost me. There's baseball on Monday nights. I'm watching baseball. During this period of time when the WWE was booking horribly on Monday and Tuesdays, there was a lot of Stanley Cup hockey and NBA basketball playoffs to watch that got my attention. So I'm out of the habit now. I've got to get back in the habit, and they gotta give me a compelling reason to come back. This was a start, but there's still a lot of work to do there. So Uh, talk one more thing through, and then we'll kind of wrap up our podcast here. But New Japan Wrestling announcing the round robins for the G1 Climax, and the news in New Japan, of course. If you're last podcast I did on wrestling a couple weeks ago talked about the Kenny Omega IWGP Championship win over Kazuchika Okada. Historic win in their fourth match of the best 4-match series you'll ever see. I mean, to me, wrestling's already reached its epitome with uh, with that series and that match particularly. I mean, the first 3 matches, the first 2 at least, were the 2 best wrestling matches ever. The third was in last year's G1 Climax, and it was a 30-minute match, and so couldn't quite live up to the billing of those first 2, which one went the time limit, the other went 47 minutes. The series going into that match 4 was 1-1 with a draw, and this one went 2 out of 3 falls, no time limit. It went over an hour, and with Omega getting the win, now the focus turns to the G1 Climax after Dominion, and this tournament is so interesting. If you're a wrestling fan and you're used to WWE, maybe you don't watch New Japan, or if you do watch New Japan, I just want you to think through here. One thing that's missing from WWE is a sense that it's actually a competition, an athletic competition. It's a storyline, it's a soap opera, but what New Japan does so well, there's still storyline aspects, there's still some soap opera-like aspects to it. Kenny Omega and his, on-again, off-again relationship with the Bullet Club. Now they form the Golden Elite with his Golden Lovers partner, Kota Ibushi, and then his longtime tag team friends, the Young Bucks. But what this G1 Climax does so well is it basically breaks down 2 10-team round robins, and the champions of each of those round robins meet in the final. And what it does as a result of having a tournament that's so neat from a storyline advancing kind of perspective is that because it's the 10-man groups aren't all the matches aren't all heel versus face. There's not, in fact, it's not even guys who are always involved in feuds with each other. They may have been in the past. They may have never met before. But what comes out of it is opportunities for seeds to be planted for potential matches in the future. And so I'll go through some of these matches, the ones that have my interest the most anyway. In the there's A block and the B block that these are broken down to. Kazuchika Okada, the now former champion, held the belt for almost 2 years in his most recent run against the IWGP US champion Jay White, who actually beat Kenny Omega for that belt back in January. That's an interesting match on the first night of the Climax. Hiroshi Tanahashi, also Minoru Suzuki. Suzuki is a shoot fighter that if you've never seen him, he's a badass looking guy. And Tanahashi is the quintessential teeny bopper fan favorite Japanese style. Former champion though, so he's got those legitimacy. Got that legitimacy there. One of the highlights then from the B block, the first time in the B block, is just Kenny Omega against Tetsuya Naito. That's a Dominion main event quality match. That's the January show quality main event match. You've also got Kota Ibushi, Zack Sabre Jr. Zack Sabre Jr. has become one of my favorite guys to watch. Submission specialist. His matches are different than anything you'll ever see. Quickly scrolling down the rest of the blocks, another match: Tanahashi and Jay White coming up on the second night of the A block. Hangman Page and Michael Elgin. Hangman Page, a guy that for me, he's a local guy, he's a Virginia guy, trained at the Boogie Woogie Wrestling Camp down in Shawsville, Virginia, down near Blacksburg. I've actually been there before. Boogie Woogie Man's somebody I know really well. Hangman Page, a Virginia Tech graduate, got to interview him on our podcast a few months ago. So Hangman Page in this competition, really interesting. Bullet Club member. You've also, let's see, down in the B block, Kota Ibushi, Juice Robinson. Juice Robinson, well known to Ring of Honor fans in particular. Scrolling down some more, Looking for some highlight matches. Kazuchika Okada and Hangman Page. Man, I'm looking forward to that one just because, again, the Hangman Page connection. Omega Tama Tonga in the B block. Let's see. Tanahashi, Hangman Page. I guess I'll highlight all the Hangman Page matches, right? Omega Juice Robinson. Their match. If you have the New Japan app and you need it to watch these matches, it's 999 yen per month, which is about $9.11 per month. Juice Robinson and Kenny Omega had a really great match at last year's G1 Climax, so you can get a preview of that. But Robinson, a high flyer, Omega can work any style. That one should be quite interesting to see. Tomohiro Ishii, Zack Sabre Jr. coming up in that A block, the B block, excuse me. Let's see, kind of scrolling down some more. Omega Sonata. Let's see, and then Jay White, Hangman Page. That's the match that sort of the potential matchup that led to that first breakup of the Bullet Club. If you remember, if you're a New Japan fan, you might remember, and if you're not, you wouldn't remember. But after Jay White upset Kenny Omega for that U.S. Championship, Hangman Page came down immediately to challenge, and that's what led to the little incident that broke up the Bullet Club there for a while. That interesting storyline that then led to the reuniting of Omega and Kota Ibushi, longtime friends, tag team partners, and now there's an Omega Zack Sabre Jr. match, which might be the match of the tournament, if not for the fact that because Omega and Kota Ibushi are in the same block, they've got to wrestle each other. That one could be quite interesting. So you'll see me covering this. This tournament starts in the middle of July. Let's see, the first matches in this start on July 14th, and it runs for a while because it's these 10-man blocks. It goes all the way to August 11th in terms of the finals of the round robin part of it, and then August 12th you have your A block winner against your B block winner, and that's where things get interesting. I mean, in past years, and I'm not sure if this is always the case, but the winner ends up getting to challenge the standing IWGP champion. So, assuming Kenny Omega doesn't win, then you get your challenger perhaps coming up for next year's January show. So, Wrestle Kingdom, what would that be? Wrestle Kingdom 13. So yeah, I mean, it's just. The format itself is, again, so conducive because you get unusual matchups. You get faces versus faces. You get friends versus friends. And you get heels and faces who haven't interacted for a while that maybe end up interacting as a result thereafter. So one thing that's noticeable here, though, no Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho had won, Kenny Omega won the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. Jericho won the Intercontinental Championship at that last show, Dominion, but I don't see his name listed in here in either of the two fields. So no Jericho. But other than that, you've got all the stars. You've got Tomohiro Ishii. You've got Omega. You've got Ibushi. You've got Naito, who's if you've never seen Naito, you got to watch a Naito match. Psychology-wise, work rate-wise, top guy. He'd be a top guy, and any of these guys would be top guys in WWE, and they would instantly be the elite status guys. Tanahashi, you've got Okada, of course. I mean, Okada, it'll be interesting to see how his character adjusts and how it's adjusted post championship. He's been carrying that belt for so long that it was kind of like for me, I'm thinking through how Ric Flair. When those rare times back in the 80s when he didn't have the NWA belt around his waist. This will be similar for Okada. We'll see how he performs without the belt. He's still a top guy, certainly. But seeing how he performs, Jay White's a guy that is a young guy that's going to be a top star in his business. And Hangman Page, I'm rooting for Hangman. Come on, Hangman, let's do this. So, Hangman Page, Kenny Omega next year. I don't think that's going to be the case headlining next year's Wrestle Kingdom, but looking at these two fields, it could be anybody, and that's the fun thing about it. You don't know, you just don't know. So that breaks us up from some New Japan talk, wrapping up our podcast here, WWE, and again the sad news with Leon White, guy that I remember from the time I was a teenager watching wrestling, and Leon White passing away at the age of 63. So our condolences to him and to his family, obviously his family, in memory of Leon White, the big Van Vader. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and again, looking for a co-host to supply some co-host, right? So if you think you might have what fits the bill, email me at augustafreepress2@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at augfreepress. Send me a direct message, and let's figure something out here. I do love talking wrestling. It's okay talking about myself, but it's even better talking with other people who like talking wrestling as well. So anyway, that's the case. Thank you for your attention today, and signing off. And I sign off even my wrestling podcast. I'm a UVA graduate, got to say it this way: wah, hoo, wah.